Great, thanks. I'm very happy to introduce our last speaker of this session. It's Aki Smith. Aki is a caregiver and a patient advocate for her father, who was diagnosed with advanced stomach cancer. She's a founder and executive director of Hope for Stomach Cancer, which is a nonprofit, provides resources to the patients and families or caregivers to promote early detection and prevention to the general and the medical communities. And I like this last part, is that her vision is to really bridge that gap between research and community. And for that, I'm really interested in her comments about advocacy for gastric cancer. So, Aki, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you for all those people that are here live and streaming. My name is Aki Smith. I am the caregiver to my father and the founder and executive director of Hope for Stomach Cancer. I'm truly honored and humbled to be here again. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, in March 2020, I spoke at the inaugural Gastric Cancer Summit a week before the world shut down. That was such a great experience, a great memory, and really learned some valuable information, which I have since applied to Hope for Stomach Cancer. And November is Stomach Cancer Awareness Month, so what an honor to have this important summit right here in this important month. How do I click? Okay. So I'm going to start off with sharing the creation of Hope for Stomach Cancer and then go into my story, Am I at Risk? I will discuss the problem and what Hope is doing for the community, and I'm going to close with gastric cancer advocacy. So my dad's story. My dad was diagnosed in November 2013. He had gastric bleeding, and because his brother died from diffuse stomach cancer, my dad was worried. He spent the weekend at the hospital. They did an endoscopy and colonoscopy, and he was actually discharged with diverticulitis. I remember calling the GI doctor who performed the tests at the hospital to check in on the status of his biopsy every day. And we were relieved when my dad was told that he had no cancer. However, the doctor only read my dad's colon biopsy. He never looked at my dad's endoscopy because his stomach didn't raise any concerns. There was no red flags at the time of the procedure. Thankfully, my dad had a follow-up visit, which he went by himself because I thought it was going to be a physical, and he was told he had stomach cancer. The news was shocking, and even more shocking was that after further diagnostics, my dad's cancer was quite advanced, even possibly stage 4. His primary care doctor basically said that typically people with this type of cancer have less than 6 months to live, and that his team of doctors weren't very encouraging either. And Google was very unhelpful. It was a very frightening time. Thankfully, we were able to switch his care to an NCI institution where he was restaged. Being told that he could possibly be cured really changed his outlook. I promised myself that if I could hear the words remission, I would create change. My dad's tumor was 7.5 centimeters. He had a total gastrectomy, 6 cycles of Fofox, 25 local radiation, and 1 year of Herceptin. Now, I want to say that after 8 years of being his caregiver, I recently learned that Herceptin is really only given to people that are stage 4. So it was experimental that they gave it to him at the time, and he has since not ever had a reoccurrence and is clinically cured. My dad had so many risk factors. He was literally the poster child of stomach cancer. 71 years old, male, Asian, Japanese to be specific. His brothers had stomach cancer. One died from it in his early 30s. My dad also eats a lot of nitrates and processed foods. A lot of ethnic foods are high in salt. He was also slightly bigger at 5'7" and 171 pounds, a smoker for over 50 years, and unknown to him was infected with H. pylori. In 2015, I did hear the words remission and Hope for Stomach Cancer was created. I still remember the feeling of loneliness, searching for resources and navigational support. Stomach cancer is not a problem to any of us until you or a family member has it. Therefore, together, we raise awareness and provide educational support for everybody in the community. Our mission statement is providing resources to patients, caregivers, and loved ones while promoting early detection and prevention to the general and medical communities. Hope creates and facilitates programs that enable those affected by stomach cancer to take actionable steps and overcome each phase of the disease. So here's my story. In 2016, after finding Hope for Stomach Cancer, I asked PCP for an H. pylori test. I had a hard time convincing her because she said it wasn't common in people my age, and that the only symptom I was having was stomach hunger pains at night, and that was not enough for insurance approval. Somehow I convinced her for the order for the breath test, and she was shocked when it came back positive. I went through the antibiotic treatment, retested, negative, and felt as though I was done and closed the chapter of my life. However, the symptoms started coming back in 2020, and I came to this gastric cancer summit, and I thought, okay, well, as soon as I get home, I'll get the scope done and see what happened, because I know that the eradication of H. pylori is not enough. And then COVID happened, and the world closed down, and everything got postponed. And then, at the end of 2020, I started having this sensation that food was being stuck in my throat. I couldn't explain it, so I went to my PCP and said, look, I went to this summit, I really want to get a scope, I really want to figure this out. And I know that H. pylori caused some significant damage, and maybe this won't be able to be undone. Unfortunately, everything was really backed up. She had me go through a series of tests before the referral for the endoscopy. I had an ultrasound of my thyroid, then I went to an ENT, and they did a scope through my nose. And then finally, in June 2020, I was finally able to get that endoscopy. And sure enough, the doctor said to me, you just don't fit the mold for somebody who would have gastric cancer. You'll be fine, you're fine. But they saw chronic gastritis. It's shocking, as I'm not a smoker, not a drinker, I'm a healthy eater, relatively stable, I'm dairy and gluten-free, and have been for a long time. Obviously, H. pylori for this significant of time has caused some damage, and I'm very hopeful and careful to stay ahead of it by surveillance and more dietary changes, and soon, hopefully, maybe incorporate exercise. So these are kind of my risk factors. And this was my endoscopy. And this is kind of where I am. Dr. Andrew Chan put this lovely chart together for the Stand Up to Cancer team, and I have chronic gastritis. So moving forward, I'd like to share the problem that our organization is facing. Here's the problem. The patients that reach out to us don't have any of the risk factors. In fact, most of these patients are young, so young, and a lot of them have been dismissed. And when the cancer has been diagnosed, they're usually already stage 4 or quite advanced. I was here in March 2020 before the world shut down, and now it's November 2022, and it's opening up again. I really need to point something out because it's extremely important to me. Over these past years, we got to see the COVID strategy and teamwork. There are prevention methods, early diagnosis at home screening, treatment options for COVID-19, and it's been fascinating just watching how the FDA, CDC, NIH, MDs, pharma all come together to get through this. And I feel like maybe we put this type of effort into this cancer. We all need to come together and work this hard on creating prevention, early detection, more treatment options for those who already have stomach cancer. We've got to figure this out now and better. So some of the programs, I do need to take a moment to talk about what we do for advanced cancer because that is the bulk of our work, and there's a significant amount of patients facing advanced disease. We have an incredibly robust program for patient education navigation. We provide newly diagnosed patients with Hope in a Bag. This bag contains a navigational binder, NCCN guidelines for stomach cancer, and so much more. These bags are handed out to patients at major institutions such as MGH, City of Hope, MSK, and many more. We have a monthly support group that we do with surgeons. We have a monthly support group that we do with the Esophageal Cancer Education Foundation that we have oncologists on the call. We do quarterly webinars. We do a private Facebook group where we can talk about everything that we've seen in these webinars, what we've heard in these support groups. And for each program, we do have registration where we collect information, and then we look through all the topics, considerations, and questions, and this is kind of how we build our webinar portfolio. Everything we do is extremely relevant in real time. Remember, our vision is to bridge the gap between research and patient care. Our programs benefit MDs and stakeholders as well. In fact, I've heard from different doctors, residents, nurses that they frequently go to our website to look for grant opportunities, upcoming conferences, webinars, and even use our images for their own presentations. That's just so extremely powerful teamwork. So I want to take another quick moment to talk about Jewel. Jewel is somebody, so in 2020, Well, we're here at this Gastric Cancer Summit. I actually got a message from a young mom whose daughter was 16 years old when she was diagnosed with stomach cancer and given a month to live. She got a lot of valuable information from the summit, and then she connected with Dr. Jeremy Davis, who was a guest speaker at the summit in 2020. He immediately changed her chemo and was able to extend her life by 10 months. And now her mom is a huge volunteer and advocate. These events strongly build community. So, gastric cancer advocacy, raising awareness. There are many different advocacy groups, and they are all so wonderful, and they all do different things. There is one common ground. For example, last week I was at Stupid Strong fundraising gala. They are a grant-based organization. There is also a lot of amazing organizations, and the nice thing is that we all come together to support community. There's an organization that lobbies Congress, one that focuses on the rare CDH1 gene, one that has a patient registry. I mean, each organization is extremely unique, but what is important is that we connect with the patient. What we all want for the patient, caregivers, and loved ones is to find support and feel empowered. You need to be able to find the right team of doctors, the right treatment at the right time, and that's just really important. Patients that advocate for themselves just do better. So the most important thing that patient advocacy groups do is raise awareness about this cancer. After all, this is a rare cancer, and who better to inform the public? Us. I heard some people ask others, what are the signs and symptoms before being diagnosed? Patient advocacy groups make patients and caregivers be better advocates for themselves. Through education and resources, they get to ask for specific diagnostics. They push for their own treatment in their own treatment care. Like me, asking for the H. pylori test, and then me asking again for the scope since my symptoms didn't disappear. So the NCI has identified outreach and engagement by community-based efforts as a critical piece to advance public awareness and advocacy. Therefore, we launched HOPE's November 2022 education campaign, where we bring needed education to all constituents, the public, patients, medical communities, pharma companies, and policymakers to help improve survivability rates and access to care. It's a social media campaign called 30 Stories in 30 Days, where we highlight patient stories with the intention to improve health outcomes and increase the quality of life for stomach cancer patients, their families. We post one story of heartbreak and determination every day for the entire month of November. We shared Ashlyn's story at having stage 3 stomach cancer at only 21 years old, and yesterday we shared Kim and Phil's story about having stage 4 gastric cancer. Today we're sharing Greg's story of having stage 2 stomach cancer and passing the gene to both of his kids. Every interview has 3 important questions. How were you diagnosed? What is your treatment, and what is your hope or advice for others? And the common theme so far has been the utter complete shock of getting this diagnosis. So I'm just going to read to you some of these quotes that we received. So this one's Ashlyn, who was 21 years old at diagnosis. Around age 19, I began throwing up a mixture of food and blood after almost every meal. I dealt with this discomfort and uncertainty for months until I hit a breaking point after a particularly awful night of vomiting. This is Phil and Kim's story. I began having some odd digestive problems in 2021 as I entered my late 40s. I was having difficulty swallowing and eating, felt like a burden. Like most people, I turned to my primary doctor first for help. This doctor referred me to an ENT specialist, and then they turned me over to a GI doctor for a more thorough investigation. We're showcasing Suzanne's story too, and she did something a little bit different. Living life is chronic, as if it's chronic. And again, a lot of things were dismissed. In 2019, I noticed getting food stuck in my throat. I began having stomach pain and shaking after eating. And it wasn't until 2021 where her stomach became pretty bad, and she couldn't move the right side of her shoulder, that a nurse arranged an endoscopy at the same time as her routine colonoscopy, and that's how they found her cancer. Here's Brittany. Brittany is going to be doing a story interview, and she's diagnosed as stage 1. She's one of the very fortunate people who, again, was able to just be cured via surgery alone and not have to do any of the treatment. And she struggles with survivor's guilt on a daily basis. let's see who, Melinda. Melinda is stage 4. So she began having acid reflux in December 2020. She visited an island doctor but didn't receive all the answers that she needed. At the time, my symptoms were very mild. Aside for the occasional reflux, I was belching a lot and started to become increasingly bloated. Initially, they treated me for parasites, but that didn't make a difference. And she was diagnosed at stage 4. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, so I'm just going to keep, okay. So there's many more of these stories. Hi, Judy Chu. So there's many of these stories, and I think if you're interested in reading about them or watching them, please kind of log into our social media, and they're posted every single day. So I'm gonna close with this. I realize that creating guidelines for high-risk individuals would miss the mark for the patients we currently serve. But friends, putting the wheels in motion and starting is better than nothing, because right now we have nothing. For example, if guidelines were put in place for high-risk screening, my dad would have caught his cancer early. If my dad's first GI doctor had seen more stomach cancer patients, he probably wouldn't have dismissed my father the way he did. Having guidelines in place would give GI doctors experience in early diagnosis and catching these very minor symptoms in younger patients too. If these type of testings were routine, it would make it easier for patients to get it approved by their insurance. There is so much hope, and all we need to do is start. Friends, colleagues, we're here today together to start a movement for better prevention and early detection protocols. We are here to put most of us out of business. So let's do this. Thank you.